2024 has come to an end, and as usual, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, OCCRP, released its list of the most 2024 corrupt leaders in the world in 2024. It didn't really come as a surprise, but Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu and Kenya's President William Ruto were on the list of the top 5 most corrupt leaders in the world. But guess what? These two presidents are both allies of the United States. Isn't it ironic that the so-called champion of equality, justice, and fairness is an ally of the most corrupt leaders in the world? But how did these two African leaders get this award? Let's look at the year 2024 for Kenya and Nigeria. Let's start with Kenya. First of all, it would interest you to know that an unprecedented number of Kenyan citizens, more than 40,000, nominated President Ruto for Person of the Year in organized crime and corruption. In fact, of all the leaders, Ruto received the highest number of votes, but he later came second because the judges chose the President of Syria, Bashar Al-Assad, as the most corrupt leader in 2024. The staggering number of Kenyans that nominated Ruto reveals how fed up they are with Ruto's administration. The comments submitted with the nominations were full of frustration and despair. He's stealing everything, including public funds. People are suffering without a proper healthcare system, and people are becoming poorer day by day, one commenter wrote. He has failed Kenya in every sector, wrote another. If you recall, 2024 was full of a lot of tension between the people of Kenya and Ruto's administration. In 2023, Ruto increased taxes on certain basic items, which caused an uproar amongst the people. But it wasn't until June 2024 that the uproar escalated to a full-blown revolutionary protest orchestrated by Kenya Gen Z. The protest started when the Kenyan parliament released the proposed finance bill for the new fiscal year, which starts from July 2024 to June 2025. To the surprise of Kenyans who were already dealing with the hike in prices of basic commodities, the members of the Kenyan parliament added $2.7 billion in taxes to be raised in the finance bill. Taxes were imposed on essential items including bread, vegetable oil, diapers, sanitary pads, and other items based on the reports. The Kenyan government decided to impose these taxes on recommendation from the IMF and World Bank, which has been urging the Kenyan government to cut deficits to obtain more funds. This was more than enough to spark a protest that started on several online platforms by Kenyan Gen Z. But even before the finance bill, which eventually kicked off the protest, Ruto had been under fire for several actions taken by him. For instance, in May 2024, Ruto made a 4-day visit to the US where he betrayed the fight against imperialism by agreeing to send Kenya police to Haiti. But that wasn't the painful part. For Kenyans who were already struggling with the weight of increased taxes and a bad economic situation, it was painful to see their president waste public funds to fund his trip to the US using a luxurious private jet. President Ruto hired a royal private jet from Dubai, which cost Kenya taxpayers $1.5 million. Before we proceed, here is a reminder to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel so that you can get more videos like this. The president felt no qualms about spending this kind of money, despite the fact that the economic situation in Kenya has worsened due to the increased taxes, a move directed by the IMF. And guess what? After heavy criticism by Kenyans, President Ruto defended his actions by saying that he is a steward of public resources and it was cheaper to travel on a private jet to the US rather than use Kenya Airways. How can using a private jet that costs $1.5 million cost more than using Kenya's local airway? The worst part in all of this is that one of Ruto's spokesmen reportedly said that the benefits of Ruto's US visit cannot be compared to transport costs. In his own words, Ruto has gone to bring money for Kenyans. It will be 1,000,000 times higher than what has been spent to hire the plane. Now, this is a very interesting thing to say because it confirms that Ruto did spend that sort of amount on hiring a private jet. The reason we are bringing up what this spokesman said is that after the backlash the president received from his statement, he came later to say that the private jet only cost about $73,000 and it was some friends of the country that paid for it. What a lie. If this is true, then as the leader of Kenya, he should not hesitate to bring out those so-called friends as demanded by the people of Kenya to prove that what he said was the truth. However, we all know that that is never going to happen. This is usually the case when the citizens begin to question the extravagant spending and luxury lifestyle of the president of their country. The leader will find one silly excuse or the other as a cover-up. There is no doubt that President Ruto rented that jet to impress. After all, he was the first African president to visit the US on an official visit in 15 years. However, beyond this, Kenyans have criticized the never-ending trips taken by Ruto since he became president. It would seem that Ruto has spent more time traveling outside Kenya than dealing with the issues in the country. In fact, according to reports, Ruto has traveled outside Kenya more than 48 times in just 16 months, the highest by any sitting Kenyan head of state. The Controller of Budget, an independent office that oversees government spending in Kenya, confirmed this when it released the total spending for both domestic and international travel by President Ruto. The total spending was more than $9.2 million, exceeding the travel budget for the previous year by more than 30%. So, you can see why the people of Kenya decided to protest following an additional increase in taxes. What started from TikTok and other social media turned into a full movement across several communities and counties in the country. At first, the protest seemed not to have gotten any visible result because, on June 25th, the members of Kenya Parliament went ahead to pass an amended version of the finance bill, which still included taxes on several commodities. However, while they were still in the Parliament building, the Gen Z protesters somehow managed to break through the right security of the building and enter the Parliament building. #Occupy Parliament became a reality as hundreds of protesters entered the Parliament building, destroyed some properties, chased out the MPs, and set some parts of the building on fire. The government retaliated, of course, by sending the Kenyan police force to deal with the situation. According to the reports, the police fired rubber bullets and tear gas, which resulted in the death of 39 people and many more injured. The violent response by the government further attracted the international community and was condemned. This, together with the relentless efforts of Kenyan Gen Z to express their demand, made President Ruto finally withdraw the bill. In a televised address on June 26th, President Ruto said, "I concede and therefore I will not sign the 2024 finance bill and it shall subsequently be withdrawn. The people have spoken," he added. This was a great victory for not just Kenya Gen Z, but for families all over Kenya who would have suffered greatly under the tax hike. But it didn't end there. The citizens of Kenya have called for accountability in government, with both elected and appointed public servants being put on notice over their conduct. This is a result of Ruto's government, which has been accused by the people of greed and corruption, resulting in failures in economic policy, health, and education, as well as overall instability and the abduction of political opponents. With all these, it's quite clear that Ruto indeed deserves the award of the most corrupt leader in the world. While some presidents like Traore are busy dealing with salient issues in their countries, Ruto is wreaking havoc on the lives of Kenyans. Now, despite all these, the world champion of democracy and justice, the United States, did not hesitate to make Kenya a major ally. Under the outgoing US administration, Kenya was made the first African major non-NATO ally. And all this is simply because Ruto agreed to send Kenyan soldiers to Haiti to fight the US war. And guess what? During the protest, the US never condemned Ruto's administration or called for accountability. Instead, the statement released by the US blamed protesters and the police. Honestly, we shouldn't be surprised. Over and over again, the US and the West have shown that the only thing that matters is their interests. Now, what about Nigeria's president, Bola Tinubu? According to the OCCRP, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu came third on the list of the most corrupt leaders in the world. Tinubu was nominated by readers, journalists, Person of the Year judges, and others in the project's global network. But it's not really surprising that Tinubu is on this list. Since he came into power, he has faced repeated allegations of involvement in drug trafficking, forgery, and financial malpractice. To make matters worse, his administration has been plagued by widespread complaints, protests, and controversies, fueled by policies widely criticized as anti-people. Just like President Ruto, Tinubu has faced criticism for his penchant for air travel, given the economic hardships the citizens have been experiencing since he assumed office. In November 2023, the government revealed the proposed 2023 supplementary budget, which the president had submitted to the National Assembly for approval. A review of it shocked not just everyone, including millions of Nigerians who could not comprehend the thoughtlessness of their government. At a time When Nigerians were and are still facing unprecedented levels of hardships and poverty, the government allocated the sum of 6 billion naira for the purchase of a presidential yacht. The country has been grappling with above-average inflation for years, but the devaluation of the local currency, which has pushed it to record lows against the dollar, has led to even more price spikes and greater hardships. The inflation rate hit 26.72% in October 2023, its highest level in 20 years. Food inflation also rose to more than 30% year-on-year in September. Transport costs had already risen sharply after Tinubu ended a fuel subsidy during his inaugural speech in May, saying it was unsustainable and a drain on public finances. A lot of Nigerians cannot feed themselves and are trying to survive, waiting for the government to do something about the situation. But then what do they wake up to? A supplementary budget, which revealed that the federal government had allocated the sum of 6 billion naira for the purchase of a presidential yacht. Imagine that. The worst part is that while the government is allocating money for frivolous expenses, Nigeria's debt, both internal and external, has risen to astronomical heights. This is the height of wastefulness of public funds. But that's not all. According to local media outlet Punch, President Bola Tinubu has splashed out at least 3.4 billion naira on travel in just 6 months since taking office. That is 36% more than the 2.49 billion naira set aside for the president's travel in the 2023 budget. But beyond this, Tinubu has been linked with several corruption allegations. In May 2023, an OCCRP investigation found that Tinubu, president-elect at the time, was linked to 20 properties his associates bought in the United Kingdom when he was serving as governor of Lagos. According to the report, 17 of the properties were bought by Oladipo Eludoyin, Tinubu's associate and a director of Aranda Overseas Corp, between 2004 and 2007. Now, 24 hours before the report was published, a Bloomberg investigation exposed that Seyi, Tinubu's son, is the main shareholder of Aranda Overseas Corp, an offshore company he used in purchasing a $10.8 million property under probe by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. The OCCRP also added that a year after the president forfeited $460,000 to the U.S. government in 1993 as proceeds of narcotics trafficking, Abib Holdings Limited, an offshore company registered in Gibraltar with Tinubu as the beneficial owner, bought Flat 9 at 96 to 100 New Cavendish Street in London. The OCCRP said it later found that Eludoyin is also the beneficial owner of 17 UK properties through 3 offshore companies registered in the British Virgin Islands. The organization added that Babatunde Fashola, Tinubu's former aide and successor, and Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the incumbent governor of Lagos, also had a hand in controlling Aranda Overseas Corp's internal affairs. With all of these, it's no wonder that 2024 was marked by widespread protests under the banner of #EndBadGovernance, where Nigerian citizens decried rising poverty and poor governance. However, unlike Kenya, the protest ended with no tangible results. In fact, the government responded by shutting down the protest using the police and underhanded tactics such as bribery. The administration's handling of the protests, including mass arrests of protesters, human rights abuses, and attacks on journalists, also deepened public discontent. Like Ruto, President Tinubu certainly deserves the award, and the best thing that will happen in any of these countries is for the two leaders to be removed from power. Like Ruto also, Tinubu is a strong ally of the United States, and why wouldn't he be when all these while he has been an active CIA agent? Honestly, Tinubu has turned Nigeria into a joke. Think about it. The president of a sovereign country is an active CIA agent of another country. There is no doubt that under Tinubu's leadership, Nigeria will certainly pursue the interests of the United States. As we said earlier, the only thing the US cares about is protecting its interests. And even if it means working with the most corrupt government, the US would not hesitate to do it. This makes the US the most corrupt itself. It's therefore not a surprise that after it was kicked out of Niger, the US began to seek partnership with Africa's worst dictator, the President of Equatorial Guinea. Interestingly, the OCCRP's most corrupt list awarded a special Lifetime Non-Achievement Award to the President of Equatorial Guinea, President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo. President Teodoro is not just one of the longest-serving dictators in Africa, he is also one of the longest in the world. After leading a coup in 1979 to seize power from his uncle, Obiang has mercilessly repressed any dissent with unlawful arrests, forced disappearances, and torture. While Equatorial Guinea is a small country blessed with significant oil and gas deposits that have generated considerable revenue, Obiang has stolen much of the country's wealth together with a ruling elite. Instead of developing the country into a model for Africa, he has squandered its natural resources, living an obscenely lavish lifestyle while the rest of the population suffers in poverty. The longer he stays in power, the more his influence grows across Africa. Now, when we say that the US military paid a visit to Equatorial Guinea, we don't mean that they came for a tour of the country. These officials came to deliver humanitarian aid financial assistance. From the United States government to the President of Equatorial Guinea, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, a tyrant now in his 6th decade in power. The aid to Equatorial Guinea is the latest attempt by the US to woo President Teodoro. Speaking after the donation of humanitarian aid to Equatorial Guinea, Commander Michael White stated that, "We hope that this donation is the beginning of additional cooperation." The US Ambassador to Equatorial Guinea, David Gilmore, expressed hope that the recent donation of medical supplies would be the first of many opportunities to partner with the government of the country. Ordinarily, this engagement between the United States and Equatorial Guinea is not supposed to be a bad thing because it's normal for countries to seek engagement with each other. However, for a country that supposedly prides itself on pushing for democracy, human rights, and anti-corruption, the fact that the United States is willing to work with a regime that is the complete opposite of what it stands for just because they want to maintain a military foothold in Africa proves to the world how hypocritical the United States is. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and share.